one business where the government is the sole customer has been doing quite well this year. That's defense stocks. If you look at the defense sector doing quite well this year. The headline I saw this week that Huntington Ingalls Industries, which is one of the largest shipbuilders in the U.S., also the employer of my stepdad, so has a little spot in my heart, hiring 3,000 full-time workers for their shipyard. So one of the things we've talked about in the past, as maybe potential flies in the ointment of the defense story, is that there'd been a significant investment made or allocation made towards enlarging the Navy under the previous administration. Now, with President Biden moving in, some worries that maybe that gets pulled back. Well, when you have one of the nation's largest shipbuilders saying, hey, we're hiring 3,000 more workers, that's really showing confidence in a continued robust defense budget. What do you make of the environment for defense stocks and what we can maybe read through from this action by Huntington Ingalls?
Sure. So context, this is definitely good news. It's 3,000 jobs and it's on the Gulf Coast. It's in the Ingalls side of it, which, Nick, you understand from being from down there, but kind of is the ugly stepchild of Huntington Ingalls because it's not the nukes that they have in Virginia Beach. So this is good news. But I mean, look, Ingalls right now has 11,000 employees. A couple of years ago, it was at almost 13. So getting three, I mean, this is kind of an ebb and flow. What we've seen is that some of these last generation ships that were already baked in prior to before the previous administration talked about growth, those contracts are maturing and to the point where we are getting steady workflow. So I think that explains Ingalls. That's where they make the destroyer. That's where they make the Coast Guard cutter. So I think it's more of a sign of steady work. But your point is a good one. Too much is made of administration's year-to-year budget when people consider this sector. And what we're seeing with this bounce back off of a terrible 2020, where most of the stocks were down 10 to 30%, based largely on the fear of a new administration. Now we've seen the budget and we're saying, hey, okay, they can live with this. So we're seeing the bounce back. The budget is out now. We can actually look at it. It is flat to down. Investment spending, which is kind of the contractor portion of the bigger pie, is down, but only down by about 1%. It's 248 billion with a B. That's about 2 billion better than we expected. R&D, which tends to be the higher margin than a new ship, R&D is up. So, what we found in the last couple months and as the budget started to take shape is the worst fears weren't going to be realized and the stocks have recovered. And I think it makes sense. I think people who were listening to the two of us last year might have seen this coming, but I think the sell-off was overdone. And so now this is more of a bounce back than a Biden defense rally or something like that.
Right. And, not to get too political here, but I think when you think about some of the priorities of the Biden administration and that we want to stimulate the economy, we want to create jobs, all those sorts of things, it's always challenging to get these types of stimulus spending bills passed. Well, one thing that can stimulate the economy and create jobs, like we're seeing with Huntington Ingalls, and that tends to be supported on both sides of the aisle, at least on spending more, is defense, right? It's one place where you can get both sides to agree, hey, we can spend some money on defense. So actually in this environment, if you look at some of the priorities of the administration, you could tell a story about how, there's probably some support for defense spending. When you look at the sector today, Lou, obviously, a lot of these companies up significantly so far this year. Do they still seem attractive, or do you think the valuation has normalized? What are your thoughts?
So I thought some of them looked attractive before the sell-off. And so now that it's back, my feeling on relative attractiveness really hasn't changed. I mean, I thought there were some screaming buys last year with the sell-off, but even they're, it's funny to look at because Lockheed Martin is kind of the laggard this year. They're only up 10%, but they were the best performer last year when they were only down 8%, when some were down 20, 30. So I do think for long-term holders, especially those who are interested in income, because you get dividend yields 2-3%, I don't see anything in the winds that make me think this sector is going to hit the skids. And remember on the politics and all this, that most, like I said, with Huntington Ingalls, most of what they are building today was allocated years ago. The weird, cool thing about investing in this sector is that with this one customer, and this customer is so transparent in his plans with a 5-year outlook on what they want to spend every year, you have that, you have backlogs in the tens to hundreds of billions for these big companies. even if defense spending falls off the cliff, that's a 2030 problem at this point. So there is a sleep at night. I mean, it's not going to give you cloud appreciation, stock appreciation sometimes, but dividend focus, sleep at night, steady growth. Nothing has changed in the last year as they've gone down and up that changes my opinion on that.
Yeah, and this is the type of sector that, frankly, you don't want hypergrowth because that means some bad things are happening in the world.
Right.
You want
Yes.
it. You want it to be a just kind of steady, the walk softly and carry a big stick type spending. Yeah, you don't. Anyway,
Very good point. Yes.